Welcome to Smashing Through Walls with Carla McGee. Whether you are just pulling up a seat to the table, breaking a glass ceiling, or smashing through walls, grab your favorite mug and join us on the first and third Friday at 11 o'clock for candid conversations with industry experts and decision makers as we navigate and explore all the things related to real estate and community.
Welcome, everyone, to Smashing Through Walls, where we don't want to just break glass ceilings. We want to smash down the walls. Today, I am super excited to introduce one of my personal friends, Melissa Murphy. Melissa and I met, I think, like in a mom's networking group or something like that when I did a short stint in Portland, Oregon. She sold my house there. We just became good friends. And then I saw her on Facebook move to Mexico. And I was like, what the heck? Where is she going? And so I've never really gotten a chance to ask her. And so today I'm really excited that we could actually have that conversation. So I'll let you introduce yourself and your brokerage and then tell me what happened.
Yeah. So I am with Harcourts North America, and my business partner, Heather Walker, and I opened Harcourts Baja, and we were officially launched in January of this year. It took about a year to get it up and going because the government process, it's just a very time-consuming and cumbersome deal. So we opened officially January 1st, and we're off to the races. So yeah, so Harcourts is a global company, 11 countries. Well, now we're the first one in Mexico. So we have that distinction of being the groundbreakers in Mexico and smashing through those walls, I guess.
That's right.
So we're 11 countries, 1,100 offices worldwide, and ironically, 11,000 and growing brokers. So
well, that's really cool.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
So hi, friend.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So true story. Melissa did sell my house in Portland. And I got fed up with the rain and we moved back here, and I restarted everything here. And I'm literally scrolling on Facebook and she's talking about Mexico. I just think she's on like some great vacation. And then she's like, the kids started school. And I'm just like, what are you doing? So what happened? Did you get tired of the rain too?
A little bit. I got tired of crying every time we left Mexico. So we have some friends who've been down here about 15 years now. Oh. And he and his business partner started the first microbrewery in Mexico. And my husband, Tim, had gone to high school with him. And then they stayed friends through college. He was at our wedding. So just a long time, kind of way back old friend. Every time we would come down, he would say, you guys should just move here. What are you doing? It's so great place to live. And then I would get on the plane and I would cry because I wanted to be in Mexico. And we had hosted 2 exchange students from Mexico. We just absolutely fell in love with, the culture and the climate and the environment and the lifestyle. And so literally in June of 2019, we were sitting out back in our probably somewhat rainy, cold backyard, right? June is often cold in Oregon, and sitting around the bonfire. And I said, let's do it or not. And Tim brought it up again. And I just said, look, stop talking about it or let's do it. It's like one or the other. We can't live in this what if land. And so we sort of triple dog dared each other. And 6 months later, literally December 29th, 2019, we were on the ground pulling into our new place. He drove, I flew with the kids, and he drove with the dog and a friend, and here we are. So right before COVID, which, it's a blessing in the sense that if we hadn't done it when we did, we would never have done it.
Right.
So that's that nugget to listen to your instincts and just, we knew Oregon would be there. We could always go back.
Right.
So
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Or anywhere. The US, we can always go back or go somewhere else. So we're like, why not? Why not?
That's really cool. And I can attest to the rainy June. So I'm a June baby, right? My birthday's June 22nd. I grew up around Seattle, Washington. And I can tell you, I left when I was 19. And I can tell you that I could count about on one hand the amount of sunny birthdays I had. And that they were typically in the rain. It was really depressing. Yeah. There's a reason why I live in the desert now.
Right.
Same, right? And like, to me, I've been to I love Cabo, and we can talk about that too. But to me, Cabo is the most desertous of all the Mexico. Like if that makes sense, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
even though it's on the ocean.
Rugged.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking out and it's like, mountains and ocean. Like it's just rugged. It's raw. The topography is a little bit like Oregon. It's just not green,
Right.
So it's interesting because when we drive and we see the mountains and there's no snow, we're like, that's just super weird. And it's so arid, but it's beautiful. And it has its own, like you said, desert beauty. And when it does rain and everything turns green in about 25 minutes, it's just an incredible place to be.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, because you guys still get monsoons and haboobs and stuff like we do here in Arizona, right? Because a lot of times they're coming up from Baja.
Yeah, the haboobs might come from northern Baja. We don't get those so much because we're right on the ocean. So we have the buffer of the mountain. But we do get hurricanes. Last year, the kids and I went through a Cat 2 together.
Wow.
My husband happened to be Tim was in Portland. Probably also was rainy, but we did weather a Cat 2 together, and that was pretty wild.
Was it? So what do you have to do to prepare for a hurricane?
On our house, there are wood panels, and you just put them up, nail them in, and hope for the best. You hunker down.
So, like you already have them like pre-measured, pre-cut, like they're just ready to go all the time.
Yeah, they're in the garage, and then we had a guy come over, and actually we had a guy come over. There were back-to-back hurricanes, and we had them put up, and then the first one was kind of a dud. It was like the hurricane that didn't happen. So he came back and took them down, and then the second hurricane turned around and happened so quickly that we didn't have time to get them back up. And so then, of course, that was like the real hurricane. But a lot of people have either the electronic ones that are, motorized and you just push a remote. Other people have canvas. And the canvas ones are nice because they let some light in. When you're plywooded in, there's no light, there's no wind. I mean, it's kind of an intense experience.
And then you kind of can't see what's going on or like when it clears or anything, right? You just kind of live in this darkness and just hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of baller though. If someone has it like on a remote, they're like, "Oh, the hurricane's coming." We're just gonna hang tight.
It's like a garage door, and it just drops down. So
wow. That's pretty cool. So, are you on the Pacific side or the Sea of Cortez side?
Sea of Cortez side. Yeah. So we look out over Medano Beach, which is the swimmable area, and all of the resorts on that side. And then I, being a West Coast girl, I do have an affinity for the Pacific side, but it's farther from the kids' school, and this is where all the action is, really. So we like being on the Sea of Cortez side.
I spent my honeymoon in Cabo San Lucas almost 22 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And my 30th birthday, which was 15 years ago. God. But I remember the first time we went, they told us that the Pacific side isn't for swimming, but the Sea of Cortez side is.
Yes.
And that's accurate. Why is that?
The Pacific, it has to do with the rip current and the tides, and the waves are massive. So on the Pacific side, you can go up to Cerritos Beach, Cerritos and Pescadero. It's about an hour from here, and it's some of the best surfing in the world.
Wow.
And it's swimmable because the way that it's also like a cove like Medano is, and it's the sand shelf goes way out, so it's a lot safer to swim. And the kids, we don't worry about the kids frolicking at Cerritos. It's really safe and shallow, and then it goes out. But the Medano side has become rougher. Just with, tide change and climate change and storms. And so it's a little bit more intense, but it's swimmable on most days. And then you just have to be careful closer to San Jose because it's rockier. So it's just knowing where you are and paying attention. Yeah. There were black flags out the other day, and somebody actually had like their 2 and 3-year-old playing in the surf. And we were like, what are you doing?
What does a black flag mean? What's that?
Well, they're graded, right? And black is like, absolutely do not go near the water. Like it's like prohibited. Where red is like, you should be careful getting close to the water. We don't recommend you get near the water. But black is like, stay inside. Like black is like, the ocean will eat you. I mean,
so I would be the dummy with my kids out there because I would have no idea what that means. So like, is there like a sign that says what it means? Who changes that?
Yeah, the resorts all do. And so there are, boards up that say what they mean. They just ignore them, and the guards had to come down and blow whistles and get them off the beach. So
wow.
Yeah.
So and so the black flag means like it's really rough out there, or maybe there's a storm coming in, or just something along those lines. It's just the water's dangerous. So it's not necessarily like there's a shark or.
No, we don't really get sharks here
No.
that I know of. I don't know that we've had like any attacks. So knock on margarita, right?
When I was just in Pismo Beach last week, and when I was there, they were showing on the news how there was like not a shark attack, but this person was taking a picture of something else and just happened to catch it. It came out of the water like a dolphin. And that's like super rare. They don't come out of the water, and they don't know why it was coming out of the water, but it was like the big deal on the news. And so my kids went surfing. I was like, they're fine. They're not going to get eaten by a shark. Yeah. Okay. So you're tired of the rain. You moved to Mexico. You have kids.
Yep.
You have a husband. You have a business. Like, how did you transition everything? How is that? Like, how did that go?
It's really still a work in progress. And I hate to, COVID ruins everything. I don't want to blame it on COVID, but that first year was sort of a wash, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're emerging and we're able to really enjoy it. So we were all running our businesses remote anyway, right? So I could do it from here. And I had an assistant in Portland who would, open doors and show properties and hold open houses. She would have been doing that anyway, whether I was there or here, right? So I could still write contracts. I could still meet with clients, and people are much more open and amenable to that. So that really led to a natural transition to being here, because on the flip side, our client base is very transient, right? They're not here most of the time. So buyers come in, they come in on a cruise, or they come in on a weekend, vacation, and they fall in love like we did. And then they want to know more. They want to stay here. So we do a lot of Zoom. We do a lot of video tours. I'll, go to a client, or I'll go to a listing and I'll show them, via either FaceTime or, some sort of way to tour them through the property, take pictures, give them my insights. So there is a lot of that. And the development boom here, the building is out of control. I mean, the number of condos being built like nonstop is just incredible. So there is actually a lot of sight unseen and unbuilt buying, which is sort of my specialty, is helping people see that vision of, first of all, yes, the confidence that this is a great developer and you can trust them and you can give them your money because there's a payment schedule, but then also seeing the vision of what the building's going to look like and how it's going to feel and what the area is like. So it's a lot of visualization.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same with commercial real estate, right? Or I do a lot of investment real estate as well. And a lot of what I do is on my own. There's clients I never even meet in person, right? It's all email and telephone and DocuSigns and everything else. And I think part of like I know at least here in Arizona, part of the like housing boom we had during COVID was people in the same position that it was like, I'm working from home anyway, and it's raining here. So I might as well work from home where the sun is shining. And and I think that's part of like the migration we had to Arizona. So we'll see if that stays consistent. So the kids are in school.
I was gonna say, I love seeing, the properties. And I think that that's something that you do really well.
Oh, thank you.
Is creating that, expressing like, this is the spot, you want this spot, and really, sharing your enthusiasm for a property or a project, and then helping people see what it's, so I take some tips from you. I'm always like, maybe I should try that, because it's, it's that same, you got to build that, initial first impression and the trust. And I think you do a really, really great job at doing that to get people sucked in.
I do appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Drawn in is better than.
Yeah. Well, and I do love it here and you love it there. So it's probably an easy translation, right? Whereas if I was selling property in Portland, I'd be like, so you want to move here? Really?
Yeah. Why? It's so rainy. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
that's what you really want
that's a really great sell, lady. Like I'm totally buying that. So, so I'm really curious about your kids, because I have kids too, right? And they're not too far off in age. They're in school in Mexico. Are they learning Spanish? Do they only speak Spanish? Like, what is school like there?
So in Cabo, because we're in this, we're sort of at the end of the world. We're in this sort of utopian bubble with a lot of expats. The kids, there's like 9 international private schools, and there are, from San Jose to Cabo, and you sort of find the one that's the right fit. And they are half day English, half day Spanish. So the kids go, half day English, half day Spanish, like Rosie's, my daughter's math is all in Spanish. So she's And then she's been going to a tutor after school just to reinforce,
Mm-hmm.
because that's hard in Spanish. But on the flip side, Jack's, Spanish teacher said that he does the best in his class for some reason. He's very conscientious and very studious. And so he can take that English to Spanish translation really quickly. So they go to Del Mar, and it's a big school. The campus is probably, it's like a small community college. Like, it's amazing how big this school is, and they run it really efficiently. And actually our kids are probably, a quarter of the population. I think that the rest is, and I mean, like, expat or gringo kids. The rest is Mexican. So they really have a good influence of local kids and local families. And they're picking up the Spanish. I think since we don't speak it at home, I mean, I speak it, but we don't speak Spanish to each other in the home, that they're not as confident and they don't speak it around us. And the other day we were somewhere and Ro just broke right into Spanish to, somebody at the resort where we were. And I'm like, who are you? Where's that Spanish? Perfect accent, perfect conjugation. I'm like, what? So it's fun to see that. So when they get their confidence up.
Well, and what an interesting dynamic, like in reverse, right? Like, especially in Arizona, we see a lot of families migrate from Mexico or Spanish speaking countries up here, and their children translate for the parents a lot. And so I always wonder, like, were they born here? But, because you're an English speaking house with kids that are learning Spanish, because how old are your kids?
10 and 13 now.
So they're not toddlers. They're not kindergartners. This is like mid-school experience where they're bringing that into the house and thriving, it sounds like.
Yeah, they're getting there. So I really appreciate that for them, because I think it's going to broaden a lot of horizons.
Yeah.
My daughter has made a lot of friends who speak Spanish. So, but their English is very strong. So there's a huge desire to speak English here. Right. And that's one of the handicaps, not quite the right word, but it was sort of one of the cultural challenges is that everybody wants to speak English. So anybody who's a native Spanish speaker wants to practice their English with you. So you're like, oh, I want to speak my Spanish with you. So you kind of have to go back and forth. And it's a very courteous culture. So they speak a lot of English to us because I think out of concern that there might be miscommunication. And so strong English speakers will speak English to native English speakers because they want to make sure. So it's a really interesting dynamic. I work hard at speaking as much Spanish as I can, just so I can practice and learn.
Your Spanish is coming along.
Yeah, it's good. My 10th grade Spanish teacher from high school would be very proud of me putting in practice. I'm sure she had no hope at the end of 10th grade, but she'd be very proud of me.
I was just telling my daughter, coincidentally, like true story, the other day, when I went to college, I was an adult. And so I went to community college and I transferred to the University of Washington. I think my counselors assumed I had a foreign language at some point, and I didn't. And no one told me I needed it. So I'm just taking my classes and grooving along, right? And I get accepted to UW. I'm super excited. We got a scholarship. Yay me. And I get a letter in June-ish. And they're like, you need 3 years of a foreign language. And I cried because I'm like, how am I going to take 3 years of a foreign language in one summer? And there are classes. They're called intensive blah, blah, blah classes. And they're 3 years of a foreign language and they count for credit and they're pass or fail. Thank God, because I don't want to know what my grade was. So now I can shop and I can order food. That's what came out of that. Right. I'm so good at shopping and ordering food that when we go to Mexico or somewhere, they'll, habla español. No. Just tacos.
Yo quiero tacos.
Right. Just cerveza. No más tequila. That's about the extent of it. I know how to negotiate in dollars and that's about it.
You can tell the difference between flour and corn tortillas.
Yep, pretty much. Pretty much. So my daughter always thinks that story is pretty funny because I'll know some words and she's like, so my mom took Spanish. I'm like, but I really didn't. Well, then that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that everything's going well. I am really, really curious about what it is like as an American to invest in Mexico. I love Cabo. When we went there, same. Even, back when we were 22 and on our honeymoon, that I've always wanted to buy a condo there or just something that someday when I'm old, and now that day is approaching pretty quickly, want to spend more time there. But I'm like, how like, how? That's not our country. It doesn't have the same laws and regulations and dollars and like all the things,
Right.
but does it? So I'm like super curious about what that looks like.
So it's the same and very different at the, simultaneously. So, we go shop for a house, we write an offer, we do all of the things that, we would experience in the US. A lot of the same, that process. The difference is the contracts have to be in English and in Spanish so that both sides can understand the contract. So anytime I write a contract, I have to translate it. Thank goodness Microsoft Word has automatic translate. So I do that a lot. We've had an official translator, but he's very expensive. So Microsoft Translate seems to suffice just fine. So we use that a lot. And then the part where it starts to get a little bit more complicated for people and a lot more time consuming is on the escrow portion of it. Because in the States, we send it off to escrow, they pull the title report, and basically escrow just gets the parties together, transfers the money, everybody signs, and everything is golden. Well, here there is the escrow team, and then there's the notario and the closing team, and it's a much more involved process because we don't have title and escrow the same way that, like, I can't look up a property owner here in Mexico the way I can in the US. Like if I want to know who owns 123 Main Street in the US, I can put it in, I can pull up the public tax records. It's much more difficult to do that here. So they have to do the title search. And also how title is held here, it's in a fideicomiso for foreigners. So for you and I would hold it in a fideicomiso, and Mexicans would hold it in an escritura. So there's those two. So if I'm buying it from a Mexican, then that has to be transferred from an escritura into a fideicomiso. So that's another step in the process. So it is a little bit cumbersome, but there are great closing attorneys here who guide people through the process. So you can do it. You can own it. It's not a 99-year lease. That is sort of the myth that's out there.
That's literally when I'm like, I'm not to interrupt, I'm sorry. But like when I'm like, I'm interviewing my friend Melissa and blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh yeah, and you can't own it. It's a lease. And I'm like, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah. The fideicomiso is a true title. So it's like a fee simple title. Mm-hmm. And you have all of the rights, responsibilities, and enjoyment of your property the same way that you would in the US with a true, what we would sort of contextually call a true title. But it's a fideicomiso. It's a real title. You own it. Nobody can take it from you. And it's 50 years in perpetuity. So if I buy it and I leave it to my kids, they can renew it every 50 years in perpetuity, give it to their kids, and so on.
Maybe that's where it comes from, is the renewal process. And maybe that's confusing. Explain that.
This process actually came into effect in like 1972, but it wasn't widely known. And I think there weren't as many people buying back then. And so I'm not really sure where the 99-year lease idea comes from. And maybe that does exist in other areas, but basically in what they call the restricted zone. So the tourist areas, all of the coastline of Mexico, and then the border. So Puerto Peñasco, Rocky Point, all of the border, Tucson, all of that with Texas. 100 miles from the border and 50 miles inland from the high water mark, you can own, and it's in a fideicomiso. So if I own a beachfront property and I do it properly through the right channels, then I own it. So nobody can take it from me. There is a case in northern Baja where a development was created and the developer did not title the land properly. So it's what's called ejido land, which is the native people's land. And he built all these homes, sold them to the people, and the people were warned that this land can be taken from you. And it was. Ugh. All their homes, everything. There's nothing you can do because it's native land and it wasn't done properly. So you have to make sure that your title is proper. In places like Cabo, Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, Tulum, all of those, they're doing it right. But yeah, so
it's very culturalized. It's very Americanized. It's very touristy. They've been doing this a long time. It's not a new process for them. Right.
And if you're buying in a neighborhood like this, like where we live, or you're buying in a condo development, that land has already gone through that process.
Right.
So then you're buying the living space, and your parcel from the developer, and it'll all be true title. And the escrow companies the good ones are really expert at making sure that the title is followed.
So in a condo situation, are you buying the airspace like you are here? And the condo association?
There's a condominium regime.
Okay. Yeah. And then are you in a single family house?
We are in a single family house, but we are in a mixed neighborhood. So there's 30, what they call villas, kind of large, to me, they feel like large townhouses.
Okay.
Ours is about 2,200 square feet. And then there's 34 condos. So it's mixed, and a lot of the neighborhoods are like that.
Do the townhouses touch walls?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. It's freestanding. We have our own lot. So we, but it's a mixed, but that's very common here to have a more mixed neighborhood like that.
Yeah. And for those of you that couldn't see Melissa's view out her window because it made her turn into a black blob earlier, look at that. That's amazing. It's all ocean and palm trees.
I know you can see it right there. That is the arches out there, the Cabo arches.
Oh, Lover's Beach, right?
Yep, Lover's Beach.
Yes. Yep. I remember a little something from my honeymoon.
We're a little spoiled. It's kind of nice to get up and drink our coffee and look at that
right.
view.
I mean, I feel spoiled where we are because I get to see sun and palm trees and my pool and stuff every day, but you just took that to the next level. So color me jealous. I wonder if like the lease that makes sense what you were talking about with how you have to kind of renew it and that could be interpreted as a lease because we have that here. Our reservation land, I don't think you'd probably dealt with it as much in Oregon as we do here.
No.
Reservation land is you can't typically buy it. You can lease it, and they're what they call 99-year leases. So it's supposed to be like a lifetime lease. But when it expires, or if they choose to not renew it, and it kind of sounds like that story you were talking about where it's native land and you're just sitting on it. They can break their lease. They can buy you out of their lease. Like it's their land. Yeah, that's where like Talking Stick and a lot of businesses want to be near Talking Stick because it's in near Scottsdale and it's in a prime location but they can't because the reservation gets to say who is on there and who's not. And
well, I think that was a major development with the fideicomiso was to make sure that the titles were true and real. And the other piece that's interesting is that the fideicomiso is held in trust, which is probably the other idea where the lease concept comes from, but it's held in trust by the bank. But you're the sole beneficiary. Like the bank can't do anything. It used to be, there were stories about people who would, have someone else buy the land, like a Mexican national buy the land, and then they would, take the land. They would basically own it through that person, and the person would hold it in trust. But that leads to shenanigans, right? So, oh yeah, sure, buy it, and then so the banks hold the trust in your name and to your benefit. So they literally put the trust like your paperwork like in a vault, and they hold it. Like that's their job. So it's not electronically filed. It's not like it is where it goes to county.
Right.
But you can sort of think of it that way. They're all the banks are sort of individual county clearinghouses, right? They have all of the titles on file. So mine might be with Banorte, yours is with HSBC, somebody else might be with Intercam. And so that's the other piece is making sure that the escrow company can track who is holding your title and trust for you.
So that is because the bank holds on to it. That would be in the case of having lending on your property, right? Having a mortgage.
No? There's no mortgage. They just literally take it and they hold it. And that's their job. And you pay them, I think it's like $50, it's about $500 a year. So that sort of figure that into your property taxes, which are embarrassingly low here. Most people's property taxes are under $1,000 a year, including their fideicomiso trust.
Wow.
So the bank holds it and you pay them to hold it. And it's almost more like a storage fee than anything. And they don't do anything with it. They can't do anything with it other than be responsible for the record. I mean, you get a copy, seller has a copy when they leave, but the bank holds it. So yeah. And everything is done in like multiples. So you have to sign contracts in blue ink. There's no like fax copies. Everything has to be, cheap copies of everything.
No DocuSign.
Yeah, blue ink.
You need to fly in and sign your documents.
We do a lot of power of attorney. So DocuSign is great and allowed and accepted for the offer,
right.
And for some of the initial stuff. But in terms of signing, you can't sign that. You have to either be here in person or you have to have established power of attorney with your escrow company. So a lot of times at the beginning of a transaction, we'll recommend that our clients just set it up, even if they don't use it, even if they're planning to come back, just set it up so you have it for peace of mind because things happen. Closing dates are never the closing date here.
Oh,
ever. That's the other piece that's very hard for people to get used to is that if we say we're closing on June 1st, maybe.
Suggested. I don't know. After the last year we've had with the market and lending and everything, there was a few times where I think our closing date was just a suggestion too.
Yeah,
it was very frustrating. So can I have lending? Can I have a mortgage on a condo there or on a townhouse or property or anything? Like, is it the same? Do I talk to my local, do I talk to a broker here or do I have to use someone down there? Like, how does that work?
There's a company called, they're now called Moxie, Moxi, but they used to be called Global Mortgage, and they're the best known name in the game. And they do offer financing. It is an American-based company that only does financing in Mexico. And they have worked with the regulators in the US and the regulators in Mexico, and they do the financing. So it is an option. The Mexican banks, Intercam, HSBC, and I think one other have realized that they're leaving money on the table and that the equity is here. So, or the collateral, the house and the property, right? The collateral is here. So it's in their best interest to start looking at programs for foreigners to be able to rent here or buy. They focus on Americans, and Canadians are sort of like, oh yeah, you guys, we have to get you some financing too. So we'll see. We'll see how that comes about. But right now it's mainly American financing, and Moxie offers that. It's a good program. It's expensive. It's 8 or 9% interest rate, but you're being able to buy in Mexico, right? So the trade-off is, do you refinance in the US and take out a cash out equity refi on your house or your properties in the US and then use cash to buy here? Or do you, balance and do your financing through a company like Moxie? And they do 50% up to 65% loan to value. So you still have to have a pretty significant down payment. But, if you're doing something that's 300 and you bring in 150 and they finance the other 150, what most people do, and what my recommendation generally is to look at it as a short-term loan, that you're not going to carry an 8 or 9% interest loan over 30 years, but that it's your 5-year, 7-year plan, right? So it's perfect for somebody who's maybe doing investment and buys a condo and, $350,000 condo, which is affordable and you can do it, pay half, and then use your income from that to pay the loan off and then help pay yourself back. And then you own it by the time you want to retire here.
Yeah. And that's
so it's a
very similar to what I tell my investors here, right? The ones who want to be future snowbirds, the ones who want to move down to Arizona once they have retired and, they're not so sunny states. Start here while you have income and a steady job, right? Because they don't loan to people who aren't working, and then rent it out, via short-term rental, long-term rental, whatever that looks like. And then use those proceeds, those funds, whatever, to pay the mortgage and try to pay it off, so that when you do come down here as a retiree or a semi-retired, you've taken your largest expense, which is your home, off your expense list. So that's
exactly.
super
Especially if you have 2 homes, then you can sell one when you're ready to pay off the other.
Right. Well, and that's actually no different here, because there's condos here that are non-conforming. And then they don't loan at, 5, 10, 20%. It's like 50% loans unless you get private loans, which are extremely expensive. So it's almost the same thing. Like, there's the Maya condos in Scottsdale are an old set of condos that I've sold a lot in because they allow short-term rentals. But that means they're primarily investor, which means now they're non-conforming. So you either need cash or you need significant funds to put down. Like the same. And then there's condos also in Scottsdale. When you're selling stuff here, you have to watch out where the lease is or where the sale is, because they're on leased land. Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So it sounds like I have to deal with it more than you do.
Yeah. I think it's more complicated in Arizona. My head is spinning.
Right. That's hilarious. So I know that timeshares are really popular in Mexico, right? And I know here we have to be licensed to sell them. I wouldn't do that, and I have heard a lot of stories about the timeshare salespeople in Mexico who, free tequila all day. And so, are these true? Is it like the lease stories? Like, does that happen? Do you, what's the deal with all that?
It's a pretty high pressure industry because their model is buy today, buy today, buy today, right? You have to decide right now. So it's very high pressure. It's how I got my work visa. So when we first came down, I wasn't doing real estate. I had a friend, our friend who owns the bar. It's on top of a resort. So he got me a job on the sales floor selling timeshare. And it was like the worst 6 weeks of my life, 2 months of my life. It was brutal. Because in real estate, we're so relational, right?
Right.
And we follow up and we help people make decisions, but we know that it's very rare that somebody walks into an open house and buys the same day, right? Or calls you, sees something online, and that's it, right? And those are the exceptions. So for me, it was really challenging. It is very high pressure. We actually we had some friends in town and we tagged along to their members update, and they were trying to sell us, and the math alone, they were bringing us drinks and pina coladas and margaritas, and Tim was enjoying his icy cold beers, and of course we ended up walking out. We're just like, no, we're not interested. But yeah, they ply you with beverages and flattery and try to get you to make a decision. I do know another mob from the Mom-Owned Network, the group that she came down to visit, and she got sweet talked into a $75,000 timeshare.
Wow.
Yeah. And he gave her all kinds of parasailing and jet skiing and all of these, free goodies. And you have 10 days or 7 days to change your mind. And so on the last day, she canceled and was like, yeah, we can't spend that kind of money. We're not going to spend that kind of money. But for a timeshare, she's like, for that much money, I'll buy a house. It's like, yes, you will.
Right. Just put a down payment on a condo, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I'm glad she got out of it then.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are ways to get out of it when you are first buying it. And then there's all of the, ways to sell it later. But we own one. We bought it 10 years ago. We paid pennies on the dollar compared to what they would try to sell it for us, sell it to us now for. We enjoy it. We use it. But, we did. I remember being kind of pressured, and my husband and I feeling like, oh God, are we going to get out of here? It's supposed to be 90 minutes on the dot. I think we were there for 6 hours, because they kind of trap you. And then it's a very interesting study in psychology for sure. So the people who do it are good at it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it reminds me, so we own one too, but we, again, same, we've owned it for like 15 years, and we own through Worldmark, which is owned by Wyndham. And we pay for a point system versus a week, like a lot of people do. So it's like booking hotels. Like we use ours constantly. We've bought more points since. I'm a little bit smarter about it now because I know how to buy them off market and stuff. But for the most part, it's been really good to us. But I have been to their sales presentations, and I refuse to go now. It reminds me of car salesmen, sales people, sales ship. Like when you go buy a car, and you're like, oh, I really like this blue Honda, right? And they're like, great. And you're like, how much is it? And they're like, well, what do you want to pay per month? Well, I want to know how much this car is. My budget is, $25,000. So how much is the car? Well, if you sign up for this, then it's like, that's not the question I'm asking. And that's what it reminds me of, is that kind of like, well, okay, so they finally get out. It's 28. Well, I only have 25. I need to bring in the manager. That's what I remember about the timeshare sales is it's like, no, thank you. I'm good. I would like to leave. Where's the exit? And it's like, well, let me get the manager so they can sign off. Why you got to sign off for me to leave? Like, I just want to go. I don't even care anymore. Yeah. And I remember being in like Florida when we were young, and we went to the presentations to get free stuff because that was like how we vacationed. I could care less now, but and it was to the point where the manager that was with us was like, look at you trying to close me, I should hire you. And I'm like, no, that's not gonna happen ever. So you're
like, well, you're like, give me your list of all the people who never, because that was the piece I didn't understand. I was like, give me the list of all the people who said, can I think about it?
Right.
And let me call them and close them.
Yeah.
Tell me what their deal was, tell me what their option was. And I'm good at closing. I'll close all day long, but I'm like, I'm not, and you've got these people out there who might've, coulda, woulda, shoulda, and probably went home thinking about it and wondering, God, should we have done that?
Yeah.
Well, let's, and they're like, nope, it's not what we do in timeshare. not what we
That's
do in
so
timeshare.
bizarre
And
to
then
me.
it's so bizarre, but guess what they did during COVID?
Yeah, they called
They
every
did
single
exactly
member
that.
of the
They were
last
doing all the
5
callbacks.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, but who's going to buy during COVID? Like, like we
Well,
can't travel. Airports. It was really interesting. I was like, okay, guys.
I
Yeah.
coincidentally was just looking through my Facebook memories this morning, and there was some post at like the beginning of it. I was talking about buying office supplies for the house because into the 2017 tax reform, if you are a W-2 employee, you are no longer allowed to write off your office supplies and things like that. And it affected us because my husband is a W-2, but he's an outside salesperson, so he has a lot of expenses. And so I was complaining about it. I was like, I hope all you people here on Facebook that are buying all these office supplies realize that last year or 2 years ago or whatever, they took that away. You can't do that anymore. This is not a write-off. And so it was a whole like discussion. One of my friends was like, oh, I just think we're all lucky to have jobs right now because we all thought the world was going to end. So it just, I can't imagine like trying to call like that. If that's the mindset, then why would people buy a timeshare at that point? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you're
Right,
just like
exactly.
happy to have a
Yeah.
job, you're not going to go spend all your money on vacationing. So it was just an
No, and
interesting
because
time.
you couldn't even travel,
Right.
and they were trying to sell stuff that people would use. Well, buy it now and you can use it in 2021 or 2022. And it's like, well,
we think the world is
No.
ending, so maybe 2022
Right.
won't even be here, in
Right.
2 years. We have no idea. So you guys are in the ocean. Your background is beautiful. Like life is good. Kids are in school. So you've lived there a while. I would be safe to assume that, the kind of like honeymoon, beach moon, whatever you want to call it, is over. So what's life really like in Mexico?
Costco, Fresco,
Sounds pretty
Walmart, homework. It's, definitely wherever you go, there you are. And so there's always going to be laundry. There's always going to be groceries to buy, homework to do, dogs to the vet, to the groomer. You got to get your tires replaced here probably more often because the roads are rough. So it's a little bit disorienting because you live in a vacation place, but you are going about real life there. And then the challenge too is that when everybody comes, they're on vacation, right? So when they come to visit you, they're on vacation. And so we always tell everybody, we're like, look, we are happy to see you. We're glad you're here, but we understand this is your vacation. So, we'll see you as much or as little as works for you. We're not going to get our feelings hurt if we see you once when you're here for a week. Or if you want to do stuff every day, we can't promise that we can do that because it is a culture that, it's a party. And it's very, very social here. My girlfriends are all at the sandbar right now messaging me, where are you? Are you coming? And I'm like, ladies, I got to work. Yeah. I'll see you in a little bit. And it's an interesting mix because there are those of us who work. I own the brokerage with my partner, Heather. And then our friends are a mix of people who work online, remote, and then our friends who are retired. So it is a really interesting flux. And then there's people who leave, April, May, and June is kind of late, but people who leave and then don't come back till October, November, December, and then they're here through the best part of the best part of the year. So it is disorienting. And some days you go, like really, like, did it ruin my love affair with vacationing here? Did it? No, but did it also sort of change it a little bit? Yeah. But I guess, if you lived in Santa Barbara or somewhere, in California, and even at the Oregon coast, right, where people go to vacation, it does give us a big appreciation of the fact that, people are paying thousands of dollars to be here and we get to not go home. Like we live here. They're here for a week.
Totally get it. It's actually like that here too. So we have seasonal residents. I have seasonal friends. I have seasonal relatives, right? Like my in-laws only live here half the year. Whenever anybody visits, they want to visit because they're on vacation. And there are times I wish I was at the Waste Management Open. I wish I was golfing. I wish I was swimming every day. I wish, like all the same things, like, right, because they're here on vacation. This is a great place to vacation. And there are days where I feel like I am on a perpetual vacation and I love living here. But same. My kids go to school here, like we have stuff to do. So when people come visit and they're like, hey, we're doing this tonight. And I'm like, Katie has a band recital. Like I can't go anywhere. Like I'm still a mom. Like I'm not on
Yeah.
vacation just because you guys are. And we always
Right.
joke that our house has a revolving door all the
Yeah.
time. We have visitors, especially not right now because it's August, but come September, October, there literally once a month there is someone coming.
Yeah.
And so we always
exactly.
laugh that that's why we actually need a bigger house, is for the visitors, not for us. But so similar, you know, same, but they see our pictures, right? They see your ocean in the background. They see my pool, and they're at home in their dreary weather, and they're like, man, they're really living the life. And
Dream.
a big part of me agrees, but I do understand. I'm also curious, what was it like to get your dogs there? Like, I mean, obviously dogs are allowed in Mexico, but was there like special shots? Like,
Nope.
no?
It was so easy. When we were coming down here for the first time, I was, in a big panic, and I went to our vet, who's a dear friend, and, got all his files and all his shot records. He was 6 or 7 at the time, 3 years ago. So, we got all of that information, got all his shots updated, got some international letters signed, and she filled out all this paperwork. And Tim had this book, right? This big fat file. They didn't even look at it. They didn't even look at it. They sort of looked over the car. They saw that there was a dog, and they're like, move along, and
folks.
They just let him right in. I go back and forth with dogs all the time because I work for Saving Baja Paws, or I work with Saving Baja Paws, which is Portland based. It's a rescue, and actually she's buying land here to build a sanctuary, and it's very exciting. But she's a special ed teacher in Portland, and she drives 40 dogs at a time up the Baja to California, Oregon, Washington. I mean, she's unbelievably devoted to these animals. I work with Tori, and so when I fly, I bring dogs back to the US all the time. And all you have to have is this little, I should have had a copy of it, but a little booklet that they write their shot records in, old school. Like if I go to one vet, they can't pull up the records. Or even if I go to the same vet with my dogs, they don't have records of the shots like they do in the US, where they pull them up on a computer. It's literally like a ticket booklet. And they write in, it's like your coffee punch card, when you go to get your coffees at the coffee shop and you have your little punch card. It's literally like that.
It reminds me of like old school passports where they used to stamp it and write it in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a little passport for the dog. And you go to the airport and you show them the letter from the vet. And, there's lots of vets who are willing to issue letters because they want to help these dogs. Mm-hmm. And then they stamp the book and off you go. So.
And all kinds of dogs, right?
All kinds of dogs.
And they're coming from Mexico up to Oregon,
up to the US.
Essentially up the West Coast.
Yeah. But it's very easy to go back and forth. Our Chihuahua, last summer when we went to the US, our Doodle stayed here because it was just too hot for him to travel. Yeah. So he stayed at a friend's house. But we brought our little Chihuahua because she could go in the tote bag under the seat in front of me. And nobody even blinked an eye. They hardly even looked at her, much less her paperwork. Certainly not coming in. Going out was just sort of the standard procedure at the airport, but coming in, maybe agriculture in the US wanted to just stamp it, but they don't do any testing. They don't do anything when you come in. They just look at your paperwork and they assume it's okay, or that it's even for your dog, and then off you go.
Wow. The paperwork's for your dog, not for you.
Yeah. I mean,
it's in my name. Don't worry. My dog's name is Melissa. It's good.
Yeah. Or that it's the right dog matching the right paperwork. But yeah, I mean, it's very easy to go back and forth.
Well, I mean, how would you even check that though, right? Like if your dog's name is Fido and they're calling it Bingo in the paperwork, like nobody's going to know. Like that's not like the dog excuse me, that's not my name. Please call me by my proper name. There's like,
yeah.
That's so funny.
It's a little doggy ID, a little doggy passport. Yeah.
I'm just like picturing the dog being like, no, that's like my daughter. No. My name's not Sam. It's Sammy.
Rose the same way. She's like, it's not Rosie. My name is Ro now. Like, okay.
Ro.
Yeah. But
that's funny.
Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So no, it's very easy to bring the dogs up and in and out.
Well, that's cool. So, so that way, if you're a part-time resident or you just own a vacation property that you frequent, then if you have fur children as well, then your fur children are welcome. That's good to know for if you rent it out too, short-term or long-term, that people can bring their fur babies. Do you help rent people? people rent stuff out, or are you connected with property manager or short-term rental property managers or anything like that?
We have not been doing that yet because we wanted to get the office set up and have a year under our belts on the sales side. But my husband, Tim, is partnering with a friend of ours, Noah, and they are doing a lot of property management. So it's a huge business here. So that's definitely on the horizon for our family, for sure, for Tim and I to go into some property management because it's just, you don't want to hand your clients off to somebody else. And and I want to be helpful and I like the long-term relationship. So, and it's fun. So you just want to make sure that you're, I'm a very concierge style, from picking them up at the airport, going to get groceries, doing all the things. Tim's been hanging TVs and paint, artwork and helping clients shop and all of that. So it is coming. It's something that I love and that I want to do, but as of right now, no. And then there's sort of two avenues, right? There's long-term renters and then there's the short-term rental. So there's certainly the Airbnb is probably there's more money, because it's more turnover and the rates are higher. So you're going to rent, your nightly rate versus your monthly rate or a year rate. It's going to be very different. So, but there's a lot of people coming for, 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, because they can work from anywhere and they want to be anywhere but where they are. So they'll come down for 3 months and
I think that sounds amazing. But you're like, what's the temperature out right now? Like, it's probably like 100 degrees here.
Oh, I'm sure it's over 100. Yeah.
You guys, your summer's brutal
oppressively
too.
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to believe because it's on the ocean. Does it cool off at night or no?
It's cooler on the Pacific side than it is on the Sea of Cortez side. But I think it's because we're contained by the bay, right? So it's much hotter over here. And then the Pacific side cools down. And then as you go up the Baja, it gets hot again. Wow. So it's a very weird dip in the Cerritos to Todos Santos stretch. I think it has to do with their wind pattern. So it's much cooler. Like my girlfriend will post it. She's in a hoodie and a blanket on her patio looking out at the sea. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm over here like in a tank top and shorts.
Yeah. It sounds like I'll keep
like
visiting
15 degrees.
The Northwest in the summer.
It's super, I'll
visit you in the winter.
But it's super, it's super hot. It's like 100, it's 100 right now. And there's not much, you can see the palm trees are like wilting. Like there's no wind.
So tell me first how people would get a hold of Baja dogs. Like what's that? I want the information posted about their organization.
Saving Baja Paws.
Saving Baja Paws.
Yeah, Tori Marie I'll send you her information. But Saving Baja Paws is the organization that I champion and support wholeheartedly.
That's really great. And so we'd love to push them out there too. Yeah. But finally, how do people get a hold of you? They want to buy a vacation property in Mexico and in Cabo San Lucas. Now, is it the entire Baja Peninsula? Or are you only representing Cabo, or how does that work?
I do up to La Paz as well. So we called it Harcourts Baja because we wanted to focus on the whole southern Baja region. We do have some land that we have for sale in Mulaje, which is north of Laredo, by Santa Rosalita. So, we'll help clients where the need is, but my backyard, my area of expertise is definitely, Cabo to La Paz, and that the very southern end. They can email me, melissa.murphy@harcourtsbaja.com. I have a US phone number, so that's really easy, text and WhatsApp. I don't know if I should say my number or what, 503-702-0369. And then our website, and I'm on Instagram as Cabo Luxury Homes Sold Here or Melissa Murphy Real Estate Broker. So I've got, lots of social media, slowly growing my YouTube channel, right? It's like, I can only handle so much social media. I'm not anywhere close to TikTok. I'm leaving that for them kids.
I leave that for the young realtors. I figure Instagram's probably as young as I get, and anybody younger than Instagram doesn't want to hire me anyway. So or their parents hired me. So
and then tell them to work with you.
Right. Yeah. So I'm the same. Well, friend, I'm so glad I got to chat with you. And thanks for clearing up some myths and telling us what it's like to buy property in Mexico. And I do plan on seeing you next year, as you and I were chatting about. So Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. It was so great to be here. Appreciate it, Carla. Bye. Bye.
You've been listening to Smashing Through Walls, a place for robust conversations about the building and blocks of Arizona commercial and real estate investments. Host Carla McGee is a commercial real estate broker with MHG Commercial, powered by My Home Group. The opinions expressed here are not necessarily the opinions of My Home Group and do not constitute any offer or advertisement of business or services. The real estate market is cyclical, and listeners assume all responsibility should any return on investment, tax consequences, credit effects, or financing terms not meet their expectations. Guests may not be qualified to provide financial, legal, or tax advice regarding a real estate transaction. Listeners are advised to obtain professional tax and legal advice and counsel.